This man was once one of the most powerful priests in the world. Vampires, the mortal enemy of mankind, were no match for him, but with the vampire threat gone, fearing that his power was too great, the church banished the priest. Paul lived in seclusion in the city for many years. But today, a handsome young sheriff found him. The sheriff said his brother's family had been attacked by vampires. His brother's daughter had been taken. He begged Paul to bring his niece back. Paul didn't believe him. Most vampires were kept in prisons under strict surveillance. There's no way they'd ever come out to cause trouble. But for some reason, he decided to help. Paul asked the Holy See for permission to go out of city to investigate. The long years of peace had made the church arrogant and blind. They refused Paul's request. They were going to send him into captivity. When he realized that the church was no longer worth following, Paul tore off his rosary beads. He easily disposed of the guards who came to arrest him. And left in style, Paul said his last prayer at home. Then he began to pack his belongings. He carefully selected his equipment, mounted his beloved chariot, and headed out of town. This was a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Much of the world had been turned into a desert. What's left of the human race was gathered in a few sprawling mechanical cities. You could not see the blue sky until you drove more than 1,000 kilometers away. A giant religious statue stood on the Gobi Desert. It represented the powerful influence of the Holy See. Paul put his motorcycle on maximum speed. After a day and a night, he finally arrived at the scene of the crime. This place had been attacked by vampires recently. The victim's wife was brutally murdered. The daughter was taken away. All that was left was a badly injured husband. Paul asked him for some useful clues. They decided to go to the prison block to investigate. That's where the vampires were held. But when Paul and the sheriff arrived, there were no guards to be seen in the heavily guarded prison. Only the blood slaves were still active during the day. They were a group of hybrids who were being turned into vampires. These creatures detested the priests. Despite numerous traps, they were easily defeated by Paul. But the blood slaves had achieved their goal of delaying them. The sun would soon set. The real vampires were about to make their appearance. This man is awesome. A vampire is too much for the average person to handle. He can take care of them with a single stroke. In his hands, the cross is not just a tool for prayer. It's also a formidable hunting weapon. No matter how fast the vampires are, he could easily kill them. Paul the priest, one of the most powerful vampire hunters in the world, surrounded by countless vampires, he chose to take out his Bible and pray first. While the blood slaves laughed at him, Paul was ready to attack. 7 crosses flew out of the Bible and then turned into darts. Paul quickly threw them out. The vampires were killed the moment they attacked. Even if a few vampires escaped the first attack, he would have easily killed them. In contrast, the sheriff's performance was terrible. He was struggling to deal with even one vampire. No wonder when he showed off his strength in front of Paul, Paul acted very coldly. Paul killed 5 vampires in a flash. The other vampires fled in fear. The blood slave, who was so arrogant before, finally got scared. Paul finally got some precious information from him.